Xayah has been a somewhat weak pick in the meta for quite a while now, especially ever since the item rework. Her favorite item, Essence Reaver, has become a not so great item on her. Old Essence Reaver favored sustained damage to gain mana back from attacking. New Essence Reaver favors burst damage and sheen procs, heavily favoring spell-weaving marksmen like Lucian or Ezreal. Not only that, but Xayah has just been pretty weak in general. She's received only buffs since Season 10 and has generally not been a good meta pick unless she's paired with Rakan. Honestly, I don't really know why her win rate is really low. I really believe that it's a poor choice of items that synergize with her kit. Currently her main mythic item of choice is Gale Force, which helps her get the mobility she actually very desperately needs. Xayah starts the game with 525 range, which for an AD carry is really quite short. She doesn't have hyper mobility that Xayah or Samira does, and she doesn't have an extremely strong steroid like Kog'Maw. Her short ass range is only a detriment to what could be a sexy hyper carry fantasy. So let's go over her kit. Xayah, in my opinion, has one of the most perfect kits in the entire game. Every single one of her abilities synergizes with each other in some way, and not in like a Samira Kiana super one-shot combo type of way. Xayah's passive, and the ability her whole kit centers around, is called Clean Cuts. Whenever Xayah uses an ability, she loads up some ammo, this ammo being piercing feathers that apply to her auto attacks. These feathers deal damage to every unit they go through, reduced to all units besides the primary target, and can also critically strike. When a feather lands on the ground, it stays there for 6 seconds. Which leads us to her E, Blade Caller. Xayah can recall every single feather that she has left on the field, dealing damage to enemies they pass through. If an enemy is hit by 3 or more feathers, they are rooted for 1.25 seconds. Don't worry, hitting this ability is actually easier than it sounds, because this is Xayah's main damaging ability. Xayah's Q, Double Daggers, does exactly what the name implies. She throws 2 feathers, they land on the ground, and they just sit there. Her W, Deadly Plumage, is kinda like Kog'Maw W, except worse. All of Xayah's attacks activate a second time, dealing 20% of her auto attack damage. This ability also gives her a big attack speed steroid. And finally, her R, Feather Storm, causes Xayah to fly up in the air, becoming untargetable for 1.5 seconds. She will then slam a cone of feathers into the ground that deal a decent amount of damage. This is legitimately one of the best ultimates any marksman could ask for, purely because it's a self-sustained protection tool. Not relying on any allies to use despite literally being Phys E, it's one of the best abilities in the game, purely because it's placed on a marksman. It would be a lot better if the cooldown wasn't so fucking high. Seriously, at max rank, it's still longer than 2 minutes. In my own opinion, Xayah's main problems, whenever she's not paired with Rakan, come not from her lack of range, but rather her mana sustain, cooldowns, and also her lack of being able to corral enemies to land Blade Caller. But that's not the problem we're fixing right now. Xayah is a heavily mana-dependent spellcaster that needs to cast abilities to be able to stay in the fight, just like Sivir, but Birdsteer. Xayah is very capable of holding her own in a fight. She has both burst damage and sustained damage built into her kit, but her highest damaging ability is highly dependent on being able to consistently cast abilities. Since she no longer builds Essence Reaver as part of her core build, she no longer regains the mana regeneration and cooldown reduction she so desperately needs. Which is why we're going to be building Manamune on her. Think about it, Xayah has a very similar playstyle to Sivir. They're both Spellweaver marksmen. Although one is extremely outdated and desperately needs a VGU, both champions excel in dealing AoE damage. God damn it, my fucking phone rang. Both champions excel in dealing AoE damage, teamfighting, skirmishing, and pushing waves. They also have short-ranged auto attacks, but relatively long-ranged abilities. But that's irrelevant to why we're building Manamune. Manamune is decent because it gives Xayah the things that I literally said have a million times in this video so far. Mana, cooldown reduction. I mean, you wouldn't buy this item for only the stats. Manamune gives 35 AD, 15 ability haste, and 500 mana before forming into Muramana. Fuck. Whenever you fully stack your tier, it transforms into Muramana, which now gives you 860 mana. The thing about this item is that they have a unique passive that gives the user more AD based on how much mana they have. 2.5% of their maximum mana to be exact. When Manamune transforms into Muramana, it gains a new unique passive, Shock. This passive gives the user bonus damage each auto attack, plus will do bonus damage on physical abilities. Muramana scales extremely hard late game. The amount of damage it feeds into itself is insane when you also account for base banana levels. Building this item, it's going to take a little bit of time for Xayah to get off the ground with this build. She's not very impactful in general without the right support on her side. Leona, Rel, Rakan, perfect supports to have on Xayah's team. After building Manamune, you have 2 options for build paths, and that's pretty neat. Xayah has the options of going either crit or lethality. Remember lethality? Originally this video was going to be on just lethality Xayah, but then I realized it's not really a requirement to build when building Manamune. Both builds work regardless of your playstyle. Not only that, but Xayah is pretty flexible in general when building items down both paths. When building crit, your mythic can be any of them. Typically, Gale Force will be your standard go-to crit mythic. Xayah is pretty slow champion, only has 370 move speed with tier 2 boots. Gale Force will give her more that I'm not going to bother looking up. Again, Xayah can really take whatever items are needed that game, not being forced to build any one path. Rapid Fire Cannon, Phantom Dancer, Runeans are all good Zeal items on her. Novori Quick Blades, Storm Razor, whatever really, Xayah is really flexible when it comes to building. When building lethality, Xayah is also really flexible. Duskblade, Eclipse, Prowler's Claw, they're all good on Xayah. Prowler a little less so now that the mobility has been nerfed, making it so users can only dash to champions now. Again, it's all really up to how you want to build her. Lethality items have less of an item pool to choose from, but again, take your pick. At least pick items that will work against your enemies, you know? By the way, when I say lethality, I don't mean strictly lethality. I mean armor penetration, Tiamat, whatever you building in Tiamat, that's also very good. Serylda's Grudge is very, very good. You know, typical assassin crap. When it comes to runes, Xayah has one keystone that is superior to every other one. I'm sure you already know what that is. And that's Hail of Blades! Hail of Blades is the best keystone on Xayah, hands down. The fact that her abilities give her 3 daggers to throw down means that you can extremely quickly get off a reliable route with Blade Collar. Xayah will almost always be using an ability before a fight to keep her passive up, so nearly 100% of the time. I can't speak for other Xayah players, but that's how it is for me. Your passive will be up with Hail of Blades. It's good on both builds, because this combo is good with both builds, lol. You max E with both builds, unless you for some reason want to max Q on lethality, which I don't advise. But you know, you can still kind of chunk squishies by doing that, and she's a pretty skill intensive champion too. So I've decided to do a little something new for my build busting series. You know, I wonder why I call it that when I haven't found any builds that I consider to be actually bad yet. But I guess that means you should comment down below and tell me some builds I should try out. I've already got 2 more actually really good ones in the works. Anyways, as a skill intensive champion, her daggers involve outplaying your opponent in order to consistently hit them. Playing against a Xayah can be pretty easy if your opponent doesn't know what they're doing. Literally the easiest way to play against a Xayah is to not stand in front of her feathers. Literally doing so pretty much results in death. When playing as her, it's impossible to not push your lane. Her passive makes it very hard to actually do so if your goal is to charge tier. But that's fine because Xayah can play elite extremely well, and that's due to her exceptional ability to poke and force fights. When playing with Rakan, this duo has an extremely strong lane presence. Not only do these champions have specific interactions with each other, but their kits together work really well in perfect unison. When not playing with Rakan, however, the laning phase is really a coin flip. Xayah excels when paired with supports that can lock down opponents in place due to her needing to reliably land Blade Collar. Leona, Nautilus, Rel especially, she's basically a replacement Rakan with her kit and also way tankier. With Hail of Blades, landing Blade Collar is relatively simple and also enables combos with your support that they don't need to initiate themselves.
Violence is my favorite form of negotiation. I always find a weak spot.
Xayah is an AD carry. Her kit naturally doesn't enable combos, but these are still very useful for trading in lane. Outside of lane, a big goal you want to go for is actually maximum damage on Blade Collar by flowing your abilities together in a way where you can maximize the output of daggers. This can be done with the W auto attack Q combo or the exact reverse. Autoing allows you to expend 1 ammo, Xayah can only hold a maximum of 5 and she gains 3 per spell cast. Double daggers can be recalled with E while mid-flight. They will recall once they have reached maximum range. Xayah can have out a maximum of 13 daggers before having to recall them with Blade Collar before they disappear. Xayah is really good at kiting because of her ultimate and E. Her W also gives her a burst of move speed when landing the first auto, which also makes her good at initiating with aggression. Xayah is one of my favorite champions who really feels like she's gotten the short end of the stick for quite a while now. Finding items that can contribute to her actually being able to do damage and carry a game was quite a task. Considering most are only really building her meta recommended builds, her build paths are much more flexible than what is currently led to believe, so here I am breaking it, just like I have done before and will continue doing. If you like this video, consider giving a like, or don't, but do. Subscribe, leave a comment telling me other builds you like to see me cover, and this series isn't all about good builds after all. Thanks for watching.
Magic is not some river that can be easily channeled. It is a churning sea that goes where it pleases.
I only hit her twice. It's funny. Oh yeah, and also check out my Twitch.